Good evening to all. A warm welcome to the fourth session of seminar on post-COVID development challenges and response, Kerala through the lens of state budgets. This session, titled Addressing Environmental Sustainability Challenges, aims to deliberate on the state's approach to climate resilience, ecological conservation, and the role of science, technology, and community engagement in promoting sustainable development. We are truly honored to have with us today Professor Achyut Shankar S. Nair, former Director, Department of Computational Biology and Bioinformatics, University of Kerala, as the chair of this session. It's my privilege to extend a heartfelt welcome to you, sir. We are also privileged to welcome our distinguished speakers of the session, Professor A. Damodaran, Adjunct Professor, Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, Sri Shekhar Kuriakose, Member Secretary, Kerala State Disaster Management Authority, Professor Sriguma Chattopadhyay, Consultant, KDISC, and former Professor, Center for Earth Science Studies, Sri Sridhar Radhakrishnan, Observer at Earth Ecology, Climate, Democracy, Growth. Additionally, I extend a warm welcome to the discussion initiators of the session, Professor S. Muralidharan, K.N. Raj Center, Mahatma Gandhi University, Kottayam, Dr. Shinu Varki, Assistant Professor, St. Berchmans College, Changanasheri. With that, I once again extend my sincere welcome to all and invite the chair of the session to formally commence the proceedings. Thank you.
Good evening to all. I'm very happy to be here in this institution for the first time. In fact, I do not know why I'm invited to chair this session. I'm a person from a technology background with a passing interest, of course, in environment and development and sustainability, not a scholar in the area. However, it is an honor to chair this session. We have 4 speakers. Sri Shekhar Kuriakose, Member Secretary, Kerala State Disaster Management Authority. I'm told he has you have a train to catch?
No, I have a meeting to attend at 5 on the emergencies in Central Cape.
Okay. So I will take the freedom to reorder the speakers. Sri Shekhar Kuriakose, Member Secretary, Kerala State Disaster Management Authority would speak first. Professor A. Damodaran, Adjunct Professor, Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, would speak next. Professor Sriguma Chattopadhyay, Consultant, KDISC, and former Professor of the Center for Earth Science Studies, is the penultimate speaker. And then Sri Sridhar Radhakrishnan, Program Director of TANAL Thiruvananthapuram, will speak. We will follow that with discussions, and the discussant initiators are Professor S. Muralidharan of the K.N. Raj Center of Mahatma Gandhi University, Kottayam, and Dr. Shinu Varki, Assistant Professor in the St. Berchmans College, Changanasheri. So I have the freedom as well as advice from Professor K.J. Joseph to also invite Dr. Uman V. Uman as a discussant after the presentations. An eminent professor who has contributed significantly in policy making in this environmental sector in Kerala. So I think the speakers, my eminent panelists, are told that they will speak for about 12 minutes, I suppose, 12 minutes. And the organizers would ring a bell to gently remind you. I have to ring. You'll do that. And after that, we have the discussion initiation by the discussants. And thereafter, maybe a few minutes during which we will open we will invite questions from the floor. So we start with Sri Shekhar Kuriakose. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for inviting me here. Gift. When I have to look at disaster management from the perspective of budget, I joined Disaster Management Authority in 2010. 15 years since that, I'm heading the authority as its member secretary and heading the emergency operations center. When we came here, we had no budget. We had 0 paisa as an earmarked allocation in the plan of the state government. 2012, we had a brilliant civil service officer who was our mentor for disaster managers in the state. She's like our mother, Dr. Nivedita P. Haran. One day she called and said, if the state has any commitment on disaster management, it should be featuring in the budget, and that you should have a dedicated line of funding which comes from the state's finances to strengthen the system. Therefore, we will start discussing with the planning board as to create a working group which looks at disaster management. Think of an academician who studied in the Netherlands in a very different environment. After 7.5 years coming down to Kerala, getting into a government system, being told about a working group and this budget. I had no clue. Trust me, I had no clue. I said, fine, we're pretty wise people. I still remember Dr. Santosh, who was from the planning board, who was chief of perspective planning then. So madam said, you go and speak to him. I went, my colleague then, Mr. Ajit Chako, two of us went to meet him. We discussed with him to understand what exactly is this business. We had no clue. Trust me, we had no clue. And then he briefed us on how working groups function, how planning is done, what is planning board to begin with, and how it will finally end up in the budget. We had Dr. Annie George in the committee, Father Romance Anthony, I remember. Sir was our advisor, Shankar sir was there. So, ever since then, so if you look at 2010-11 budget, you might find one entry of disaster management. You can just download the budget in Google. You will find that under natural calamities, disaster response fund. And if you look at the plan document, you might find one entry, Institute of Land and Disaster Management, and that's where you have disaster as a word. But download the latest budget, Google, you will find disaster almost every third page. Just by plotting a graph of the number of times disaster management as a word or disaster as a word is used in the plan document would already give you a telltale of how disaster management has evolved from a planning budget perspective. What has it done? We're very proud to say that Kerala has India's one of the most robust and looked upon disaster management authority. Well, in Kerala, you would hear a lot of criticisms on us. Yes, we welcome. It's fine to have criticisms. This is democracy. But go to any forums in the national level, you will hear where we stand. All because that the state collectively showed its commitment through a financial budget exclusively for disaster management. It all started there. Before that, we were working with peanut money coming from some UNDP projects. When disaster management itself was starting, we were all talking about funding that comes from MHA with UNDP support, maybe some tricklets running into few lakhs. Over time, we evolved into a planned budget of about 6 crores. But the sheer amount of projects that we run outside the plan with funds coming from National Disaster Management Authority or World Bank runs into several crores. You were seeing in the video here when I was just walking in the Kavacham system. It's an 80 crore project. Our Cyclone shelters was 60 crore project, of which 25% came from the state. So this process of showing commitment to this cause has made this institution maybe capable above average when you benchmark it in the country. MHA also had a benchmarking exercise. We ranked third in the country. And that's where we reached with all these inputs. It doesn't go without saying that we have our own difficulties, because disaster management is not always as it is planned. Every year brings in a new startling reality in front of you, a contingency in front of you, which you would have not foreseen. And many a times, the beginners of the contingency management is us. You would have seen when the ships capsized, MSC Elsa, we took over control. We decided how things will be operated. We managed it in the first couple of weeks. Then a second ship caught fire. You all know about the second ship also, but there was a third ship that caught fire, which none of you would know. So each of this comes to us, and we are able to take that shock, dissipate the shock, manage it, routinize the processes, hand it over to the respective departments to continue management. And we thereafter step in only if there is a real requirement from our side to facilitate. So that's all about emergency response. If you look at our current processes in the government in terms of procurement, in terms of our financial code, in this rapidly changing climate scenario associated with so much of extreme events that are happening, not only me, every other disaster manager in the executing role across the country faces this difficulty of having to grapple with paper requirements against real world requirements. This gap exists. For a long time, disaster management used to be a top to bottom approach. It took a lot of effort and a lot of blood. When I say blood in double quotes, at least few of the very senior mentors of ours would understand what that blood is. 2019, we inverted the pyramid. We had to have a slap in the face in 2018 in the name of floods of Kerala, which told that if you keep it top to bottom, it's not going to work. We have to decentralize disaster risk reduction as well. So we launched a program under the Rebuild Kerala program called the Nammal Namukai, wherein we started off with preparing local government disaster management plans. And my current colleague and then Director General of KILA, Dr. Joy Alman, was very instrumental in it. We combined our forces. We planned how this has to be done. We made the local governments prepare their DM plans. Then came the COVID. A lot of that exercise benefited in how initially Kerala was able to manage COVID. At that point of time, we didn't have separate funding earmarked for local governments to react or to manage or to mitigate or to prepare. Over time, then came the local government's own finance commission. Currently, Harilal sir is here. Prior to him, I think Vijayanand sir was here. They ensured that there is a budget allocation and there is a mandatory requirement of having to have disaster management linked projects within the local planning process. Then we decided at the SDMA level, with the Honorable Chief Minister's approval, that we will also provide access to local governments funds from the State Disaster Response Fund. So this goes outside their routine budget. These are funds that we provide them directly. So they don't go take it through their Sulekha or any of those different monitoring systems. This is funds that we give. What do we give funds for? To be prepared to face emergencies, to be preparing their camps, to undertake certain mitigation measures. And the range of that funding is per ward 25,000 rupees, per panchayat 1 lakh, per municipality 5 lakhs. Per corporation, 7 lakhs on multiple heads. Kerala is the only state which has mainstreamed this. It is now a de facto process where the local governments in the month of May request the collectors for 1 lakh rupees each to clean up their camps, to ready the lights, to clean up the toilets, prepare all the schools which are used as camps for camps to be run. They take 1 lakh rupees to prepare sandbags. They are able to take 1 lakh rupees to purchase response equipment. So we recently, as recently as 2 days back, we have decided to fund one local government 2 crore rupees to construct a certain retaining wall where 50 families will benefit. We also went 1 length further. Thank you. We also went 1 length further. We also have instituted what is called a vulnerability linked relocation plan. We were the first in the country to do this. Pan Kerala, proactively, if there are areas identified through a certain checklist as hazard susceptible and that there are houses there, they're able to access 10 lakhs from us and relocate themselves. But the beauty of this program is they are also able to maintain their original piece of land. This is because there is an emotional connect between ancestral property and us. So if we try to sever that, they will not leave easily. So it's more or less like a bait. You can't permanently live there anymore, but you can keep the land for agriculture or other purposes which are non-permanent. And over 4,500 families already moved. Little told about it because we don't trumpet it. But this is also mainstreaming DRR and also consciously trying to alter the land use. It all boils down to this one fact that Kerala requires a very robust land use plan. And we, disaster managers, are one that tiny speck in the whole process. When extremes come, we pop in or we give policy advisories related to that. Climate change, a larger domain where a lot of adaptation measures will be required. But all said and done, it boils down to the land on which we live. And there we require a proper land use plan. And that land use plan is what we need to essentially fund. And we have to also decide that we will not fund those plans which doesn't have a self-disaster and climate change certification. For the disaster management, we already have that circular issued. We're now trying to work with planning board to mainstream disaster management plans into departments. But ultimately, it all boils down to land, and an appropriate land use plan is what we need to finance, budget, and promote. That is what I will say as of now. I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Shekhar Kuriakose. We now move on to Professor A. Damodaran. Over to you, sir.
Thanks very much for inviting me to the GIFT, a very important thematic discussion in GIFT. Professor Joseph had sent me the invitation, and then, as is expected of him for many years that I know him, he sends about 12 documents on Saturday and asks me to go through the entire thing. So I am basically fatigued reading all those documents. And sometimes I may not be giving a very accurate picture about, because I have not studied Kerala fiscal system. I don't study fiscal systems very much. And I know that I'm sitting among luminaries like Professor Kannan, Mr. Harilal, and of course, Dinesh abroad. But let me start off by saying that I brought in these slides. I normally bring slides. I don't even finish 2 of them, not because they're too long, but let me take you to some key facts on ecology. This one. To start. So So, no, there's no keyboard. Okay, so I'll get some 2 more minutes for this delay, I suppose. Okay, okay, fine. Wait down. See, I was here about 3 months ago or 2.5 months ago to talk about climate change adaptation in a World Bank meeting. I happened to listen to Mr. Jyotilal, and he very proudly said that there are 2 panchayats in Kerala which have become net zero. So I tried to look up which are these panchayats. Then I got an idea. Yeah. Huh? Yeah, okay, fine. So another minute gone. So Meenangadi in Wayanad. Wayanad, I used to be my beat in 1996 to 2000. I have studied the coffee ecosystems and the plantation ecosystems, including Idukki and all that. Later on, Professor Joseph appropriated my territory. So I have moved on. But I refuse to move out of environment totally. Meenangadi has got this wonderful net zero, M.S. Swaminathan Foundation. Haritha Keralam is, of course, one of the success stories of people's campaigns to assist local bodies to do it. And Mr. Kuriakose just now mentioned about how important local bodies in Kerala are. So I will, without much, uh, I have a habit of skipping. I've already skipped quite a lot of slides. I have only a couple of points which I thought are important to be flagged. One is Kerala rivers have an annual water discharge of in river basin wise. You will find that this is the graph that people are talking about. And these three rivers are fairly impressive. These three are important. That is Muvatupuzha, Kaliyar, and Meenachal. Payasvini and Valapatnam and Chaliyar. Slightly, and all these are above average. Now, the most interesting part is if you look at the sediment discharge, water discharge and sediment discharge, you will find that these three rivers are in a very bad shape because they discharge a lot, but they also discharge a lot of soil, which is not a very good. So you have to decouple them. But if you look at this is slightly outdated, maybe the data is outdated. It is written by two scientists. This paper has been published by two scientists and way back in 2001. But if you see the middle path, that is that Muvatupuzha, Kaliyar and Periyar, they are doing pretty well. But others are not doing that well at all, right? Now, I have only 2 or 3 things to flag. Why should we allow, why is it that certain high altitude basins in Kerala discharge more soil and more water? Why is it that certain other zones of Kerala have high water discharge but very low soil discharge? This has a lot to do with what Mr. Kuriakose mentioned as land use problems. And land use problems to be monitored, and this is a very important point. Land use to be monitored, we need a DPI for Kerala, Digital Public Infrastructure for Kerala. And that is basically relying on Internet of Things and blockchains, right? Not even blockchains. It should be another technology altogether. So you monitor the data from time to time. Your emergency preparedness is much better. Your land use planning is much better. You batch it with edge analytics. You do the analytics at the ground level, at the basin level where the IoT devices are kept. You can achieve wonders. And then I will come to another scheme. Now, this is for something which the gift may consider. See, there is something called parametric insurance. Now, parametric insurance is in implementation in Africa, Philippines. We have tried it out in some, agriculture schemes in north of India. Parametric insurance helps you to be fiscally unconstrained when a disaster strikes. Because all that you are, what is parametric insurance? Basically, if you find that you have a problem of rainfall falling below a threshold level of say 30%, 40%, you deem that there is a problem. There is a problem and an immediate payout is given, like your ex gratia payment, but it will be a much bigger amount. But it will not cover the entire amount, right? So damage is assessed in terms of the macro parameters. And for this, again, you need the IoT and the DPI to ensure that parametric schemes are being done. So who does parametric schemes? Private companies are doing it internationally. It is not done just in India. It is done internationally. Premiums are levied internationally. Payouts are done even by governments in Asian countries. So this is a much better scheme because Kerala has a great record of having managed the 2018 floods. I have studied tsunami in Nagapattinam. I have done the field research there. I find that the lingering effects of 6 to 7 years after the incident is much more. Health indices are bad. Kerala, nothing of this sort of has happened. Nothing has been really damaged. Put the act together, but with this kind of backing, and you go for parametric insurance, budget lines can be can be laid down without much deviation. So that way, it is a fiscally more prudent way of dealing with the thing. So that is the first point. All these details are there. So actuarial assessment. So what does it do? It reduces fiscal volatility. It promotes public finances. It improves budget planning and contingency management. And this is being done. It is not that I am dreaming and telling you something. Philippines is doing it. African countries are doing it. And in agriculture schemes in Central Gangetic Basin, it is being done. I see no reason why Kerala should not do. This is my the second major point. The third is there was a time in 2018 when I spoke at the TICON summit in Cochin. I mentioned blockchain. And the same diagram I have changed again because 5 years later also things have not changed. There is a new technology, which is a software driven technology called like blockchains. It's a sister of blockchains. It's called directed acyclic graphs. So basically what it does is unlike a blockchain where you move from one to the other, point 1 to point 2 to point 3, and there is no reversal. Here you can do parallel computing. In 7 different directions you can compute and arrive at an estimate of how much of floods water is going to breach, which section is going to be breached. So I would say that, something very interesting. I always used to think DAG is way below people's understanding. DAG is not way below people's understanding. The ONDC, that is the Open Network on Direct Commerce, is already doing some test cases. If you do this, large amounts of data collected at the end can be utilized as big data and implemented for very timely solutions, which will feed into parameter insurance companies. They will release your payment. So where is a question of facing volatility, waiting for central government to give you money, because this payout is automatically done. Philippines has done that. All the local self-governments in Philippines. It's a small country. We think that we are very big, 5 trillion and 6 trillion and all that. But Philippines, we have to learn a lot. Local self-governments, after Philippines, it is Kerala. Local self-governments had formulated biodiversity regulations way back in much before India had done. So what have they done? They have started parametric insurance schemes, backed it up with data, got the payouts done in advance, and the local governments are doing everything. They don't wait for central government to release the money. They don't wait for teams to land up to assess on spot what is going to happen. So these are 2 things which are doable and has been done in developing countries, which I think can be tried out in Kerala. So I would say that there should be a DPI in Kerala. This is my scheme. But this is not fiscal. This is a little, yeah. Yeah. This is a scheme. This is, anyway, I don't want to get into technicalities. I can come to it, but I won't get time for that. But still, now let me come to climate budget. Now, this is a suggestion for gift as well as the state government. I was comparing Odisha budget, Orissa. I'm very happy saying Orissa than Odisha. Odisha is a state which is the 9th largest also in the country. Kerala is 23rd geographical area. Now compare Orissa budget with Kerala budget. Dr. Kannan, Kerala budget is way above Orissa budget. Larger state, more resources, natural resources. Why? And then Kerala's net investment is lower than that of Orissa. It's a simple fact. Why is it low? There are various reasons. Today, the Honorable Finance Minister mentioned the difficulties of debt-based financing. You had a big discussion on this in the previous session. And you know what is the technique? I was going into Orissa in a bigger way for 2 reasons. 2021, Orissa was the first state to bring in climate budget. Kerala followed in 2023. Am I right? 2023-24 budget, Kerala. Look at the budget tagging. Budget tagging has been very effective in Orissa. They covered all the 12 departments, practically everything they covered under the sun, and gave a figure of 36,000 crores as against Kerala's 100,000 odd crores spent every year. 36,000 crores with a lower budget. So the trick is budget line, tagging the budget line. Kerala has a very ambitious local Minangadi, you are doing net zero. Most of the government action, so how do you do it? You take a budget line activity in agriculture, look at watershed development, give a score of 100%. And you look at environmental protection scheme, go give it 100%. You take a MG Narega scheme, you give it 75% because you know how much of works were in the green sector. Kerala's local government budgets are extremely important. This was the point I was trying to tell Dr. Harilal. That is not quantified in the state budget. So, you know where it is really missing? Roads. We think road is anti-green. It is not anti-green. The point that Mr. Kuriakose was mentioning was about road restoration in landslide areas. What is that? It is basically a conservation measure. Road in a very high non-disaster area is not a conservation. It goes against conservation. So roads are not developed, culverts are not developed, stormwater drains are not developed. They don't see green in any of these things. But local governments mostly do these things. It remains hidden. It has to be brought out. So you will find that because of 36,000 crores and 1,000 crores, the gap will increase because more and more of external funding on grant terms comes to you. It need not be even GIFBI. It can come from external sources of funding. Orissa is attracting it. And I remember that in the previous session, Dr. Pinaki mentioned a very interesting point. He said adaptation, if you do more, loss and damage will be less. Actually, a lot of work is being done on loss and damage at the local government levels in Kerala. That is not documented. That has to be monetized. Second framework, before I conclude, is what is called a CCIA impact measure, which Orissa does, which we are not doing. Correct me if I'm wrong. Climate Change Impact Index gives a much better scoring system and a wider coverage. It is a UNDP scheme. And it gives you a much better tagging result than what you are currently doing. So incorporate local governments, incorporate roads, culverts, and infrastructure, which you normally treat it as non-green. You will get a much better result on net investments in the environment. So with that, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Damodaran. Now it's over to Professor Srikumar Chaturvedi.
Chairperson, friends, delegates, at the outset, I thank Gulati, particularly Professor Joseph, to inviting me to share some of my ideas. At the outset, let me say, I am not an economist. So it's very difficult for me to took the numbers that this much, this much, this much. Tell you something. Correct. And whatever the calculations are, supposed to be for this one, which Shekhar spoke, fine. Then what I'll do? Question comes in. Fine. 2023, there's a couple of papers evaluating the Sustainable Development Index globally. Then they found out that about the 17 targets, 17 goals which we have it, the development in those goals are more where it coincided with the national priority. Think of it, Kerala's SDI index is 79. The majority is contributed by the social sectors. If you look into the other two sectors, which is less. That's a reality. Now, in fact, what is being suggested, 2023 also, I think there was a independent scientists group to evaluate SDGs and to advise UN Secretary General. What they found out is, in fact, these three pillars of sustainability, they stand apart. There are supposed to be co-development, which I think Mr. Professor Damodaran was trying to tell, that we make a culvert, we don't then account that culvert for this other thing. That's just sort of it. So the co-development part is missing. So we really do not know exactly how much is the investment is happening where. That's one of the issue which has to be thought of. I'm not really bothered much on that because a repeatedly local government issue has come. I have some experience to working with this at the grassroots level people. When you go to them, if you try to tell that, hey, your house is bad, he will tell, no, I'm drinking what is needed. Their priorities are very clear and they don't see the different sectors separately. They see all the sectors together. And that's at the ground level. And repeatedly we tell in the earth science, the earth is one. You cannot put it together. It's really one. This is missing in the budget. It's not Kerala budget alone. In general, when you try to look into it, this cross dependence, that's missing. And that has to be looked into it. When you talk about the sustainability, I have a couple of very specific points for Kerala. One, our safe operating space is sinking. You have forest, you have sea, and then the calamity due to sea has increased. And then we have 14% of, what is called that floodplain, which can regularly get flooded. And then we have roughly around 3,000 square kilometer of water body, coastal water body. If you leave them, what is the land part on which you are operating? And how we are preparing for that? This is number one. Number two is the land is the center of the development, which Dr. Shekhar also told. So whether you go to Mars or you go deep down the ocean, in the evening of the day, you are on the land to sleep. So you need really land, management of the land use. That becomes the central stage. And what is our investment on that? What exactly we're doing? Given these two extremes in the case of Kerala, what we try to tell is that Kerala investment is required to increase the resilience. So we have a program to ship the people, but where to ship the people? See, the Shekhar, in fact, he is implementing the forest or fisheries department is implementing within the 15-meter from the coast, the settlements are being shifted. And we have fishermen families, 19,000. And each one we pay 10 lakhs. All are fine. But where's the space? That become an issue. That become an issue which need to be figured. Then what I try to tell, say we have a climate change center under the science and technology. We have a ILDM under revenue and disaster management, and we have SDMA. Apart from that, we have again so the environment and climate change department. So we have these departments. But if you look into the very deep research, we are still lacking. I give one example. Virinjam port has come. Okay. Now, whatever study we did in CES earlier, during monsoon, see the current is going from the south to the north. In the non-monsoon, from the north to the south. Now, you know that Mudripura, all the time what is happening, that, we created that sort of the currents, people are dying. Because we really do not have sufficient knowledge how the sediment moves along the coast. What is happening in the monsoon and the non-monsoon. The temperature is rising in the, say, Arabian Sea temperature has rose and more rise than the land. And that is creating some sort of a situation, what is happening to that. So this deep research is required. See, the Shekhar tried to do different projects and all those with this one, but much more deeper research with the instrumentation, which is required for the state, that is really missing. That part has to come. Now, if you look into the total investment, say even the government of India level, what is our investment in science and technology? 0.8? Huh? Less than that. Korea, 4.6. Germany, 4.6. I think Germany, Netherlands in this European bloc, if you look into it, it's all above 4. If your science and technology investment is less, and then if you compare for the environment alone, taking it out, it will be further less. Now, luckily, as Dr. Harilal told, that we pay 30% of the money we spend through the local sub-government. And in the local government, the most important thing is the land and water and biomass management. So the investment on that automatically contributes as a part of the green infrastructure. So that maybe has to be looked into. Kerala has another one advantage, which we do really most of the time we overlook. Latest, what is called that Forest Survey of India, their report that the tree cover in the non-forest area, Kerala is the highest. So we have forest around 29%, and if you take the non-forest area, that comes, it's almost like a 30-35%. And they contribute to the climate change, if you to look into the carbon sequestration in all those areas. Now, we're looking into very seriously on the human-animal conflict. Now, the main thing is our settlement area and the forest area, which we talk about in geographical terms, that your cultural landscape and the natural landscape, there is no boundary, there's no border, there's no buffer. So if you create a buffer, and that buffer says like for rooms for river, river needs a buffer, coast, it needs a buffer. So everywhere there is a needed for their room, wildlife need their room. That needs to be looked into, and it has to be factored in the budget. These are all a couple of, what is called that stray ideas, because I thought, okay, this should be, particularly when people are sitting here, those parts of the policy making like our Halal, but this has to go as a part of the, if you tell the sustainability budget. No country in the world has a budget for sustainability. Let me make it very clear. But that way, when that our for the sustainable development, when we have in the WSSD, and then Canada came out with all the investment in the industry, and then we are sustainable. So we are not talking on that line. And then final word is the entire sustainability issue has to be looked from the systems approach. If you try to look into the forest sustainable, agriculture sustainable, water sustainable, it's failing. All these are part of the one system. So a systems approach and a budget allocation for that, for the institute, and this sort of a co-development issues had to be looked into. Thank you very much.
So final speaker is Sri Sridhar Radhakrishnan, please.
Thank you very much. I think timekeepers are ruthless. So let me start off. Anyway, Dr. Sri Kumar Chattopadhyay almost covered some of the things that I was expecting to say. But let me first of all start off with a caveat that I'm not neither an economist nor a scientist, nor a geologist. I'm a self-proclaimed retired computer science engineer, old batch. But then I foraged into environment, land use, agriculture, climate, all sorts of survival issues 30 years ago, and I'm still continuing to do that. 32 years ago, and I'm still continuing to do that. So when you're talking about post-COVID, development challenges and all that, to me, while COVID is a very important milestone, I do not know whether we can call it a milestone, black marked milestone. for Kerala, I would want to go back to 2017 when we first had the first shock. Okay. And then on, we have had shocks and shocks and shocks continuously. I would, so there is, in my talk, what I'll do is I'll speak some things and then I'll read some things, because some of these things are in my, in when I started writing, it sort of articulated, I mean, it came out better. See, so the talk basically, I wish to call it budgeting in the eye of the storm. This is Kerala's post-COVID environmental reckoning. And also, let me also take a caveat that I am seeing it purely from the lens of environment, climate change, and disaster impacts. And so the critique that I am probably going to be placing here, and also some of the things that I would wish to see happening in budgets in the future, is nothing to do with what Kerala has done in the last 5 years. I think we have fought the issue very well. We have really done great budgeting. Whatever can be done within the limits. So whatever Balagopal told in the morning, I sort of really feel proud and endorse it. But was that all enough? We also discussed a lot of physical concerns around it. See, Kerala has lived through one of the most compressed sequences of ecological disasters in modern Indian history. In such a short span of, let's say, 10 years now, 2017, we are having, 8 years. We've had that big deluge, one Oki, cyclonic threats every year, landslides all over the place. Even today, there was a threat in near Palakkad. And then the COVID, which is almost like an ecological disaster in terms of a full-blown governance crisis. We had a governance crisis during the floods. We had a governance crisis, almost a governance crisis, when we had the Churalmala Mundakai landslide. So it is in this state that we are looking at budgets. And so what the question of, looking at a budget itself, ecological collapse, and I will call it a double whammy. We are having an ecological collapse. And if we think it's not a collapse, let's also realize that it is a collapse. And I'll come to the reasons as to why. So largely, I'm not talking about budgets. That's the whole idea of my talk. I don't come from that space. We have a double whammy of ecological collapse and a climate collapse. And it is very neatly added on with whatever we are trying to do, even through budgets. And that's the whole question that I'm trying to place before you. And I'm glad that Dr. Pinaki put that in the morning in context, and Dr. Oommen also put that very, very clearly in context. And I just want to expand on those two things. So after Oki and after the 2018 floods, the PDNA estimated that the loss was 31,000 crores. Not a small amount. And after Mundakai, Churalmala, again the PDNA estimated 1,200 crores. So again, not a small amount. Almost equivalent to the budgets that we put for environment or disaster management and all. So what is more concerning is that over the time, these occurrences no longer astonish us. Even the budget, when you're doing budgeting, or when we are discussing politics, or when we are doing governance, or when the daily discussions happen in media and all that, they don't astonish us anymore. They sort of repeat with alarming consistency. For us, alerts are about red, yellow, orange. So today it's yellow in Kerala, Trivandrum, it's okay. The failure cannot solely be attributed to nature's fury. It's also our increasing ability to coexist harmoniously with it. What are the ways in which we can do that? That's the question where budgets come in very strongly. So we had 5 budgets, we were evaluating it. Overall, I would feel, and I'm not going to the budget because that has been well discussed today. 2021, we are seeing a COVID recovery dominating budget, but again, climate missed out, in spite of the fact that 18, 19, 20, we had climate impacts. 2020, 22, 23, we had some great green talk in the budget, carbon neutral farming, climate smart agriculture, some funds for that and all that. Again, on disaster preparedness, landslide mitigation, coastal defense, very little. 23, 24, we had some, 22, 23, we had some, 23, 24, we had a big on green rhetoric, but again, nothing about risk mitigation and other things. 24, 25, we had a breakthrough with the environment budget. I don't know whether I missed the beat, either of it. And we also had this World Bank project coming in on agricultural, the climate resilient agricultural thing. I think that's a very interesting thing that's happening, and we're all watching it, a part of it, in fact. And then the landslides happened, and suddenly everything moved into landslide relief, not reform. What is this whole question of how and when will we really start looking at reforms? That's a point. I'm just leaving it here. What is my analysis of it, of the budgets? Kerala's budgets over the past 5 years show a growing recognition of climate and ecological challenges, acknowledged, reflected in improved green vocabulary, short-term programmatic steps, which I don't have a critique over. Probably that's what's needed. And the launch of a standalone environmental budget, because we didn't see it after that. Yet, core allocation for disaster preparedness, early warnings, coastal resilience, ecosystems restoration remain inadequate or missing. Without institutionalizing the environmental budget and backing climate ambitions with targeted long-term funding and green fiscal tools, Kerala's risk remains trapped in a reactive cycle of relief and recovery rather than transitioning towards genuine resilience and regeneration. That becomes a critical question, and that's where I'm basing my budget critique on. So I'm not going to the depth of it. As I said, I appreciate what has been done, but I think there's a huge gap, a massive gap, considering what is happening to us in the realm of climate. The other two things that I wanted to talk about, I'll be very quick here, is this whole problem of, this is a different problem, of what I would like to call gray infrastructure and its conflict with the green. See, it is during the same time, 2017 to 24, and please excuse me because I've been a serious critic of it, and I'll use this platform to again say that. The Silver Line project was proposed almost in the same period. Budget allocations were done. The documents were kept secret. We pulled it out. We looked at it, and we found that this 65,000 crore project, which could have easily gone to one, because Dr. Kannan and even E. Sridharan reassessed it as at least 1.25 to 1.3 lakh crore rupee worth of this project, was not even seen by the planning board. Forget it at that time, at this time. At least one planning board member told me I didn't see it, not naming people. And the worst part of it is, when we started analyzing it, and when I say I, not me, a few of us engineers and ecologists and also some rail engineers, we found that it was perhaps, in one sentence, it was perhaps the worst project in terms of ecology and economy for Kerala. It had nothing to do with Kerala's current approach. It could have, thrown about 30,000 people out of the lands. It could have cost hydrological, concerns at about 170 minimum places. The project itself said that 170 places is coming through hydrological zones. It was a big embankment project, right north-south, cutting the east-west flow of water in Kerala. And that is the last risk you can take. There is nothing that you can weigh in between and say that, oh, don't we know this to be this project, like we did in Vizhinjam. We ultimately thought, okay, priority stays. Let all the CES studies on Vizhinjam be kept aside, because CES warned us about a lot of issues there. But we'll keep that all out. NGT also said a few things. We'll keep that all out, but let's have Vizhinjam. We've done it. Now we'll wait. But Silver Line wasn't that. The state was going ahead. Everybody was going ahead. In fact, we heard the minister in the morning say the same thing. We stopped it. A few of us, handful of us, stood against the government and stopped it. We must have saved the state. In monetary terms, about 1.5 lakh crores, and perhaps worse. Now, why do I say it so confidently? Look at the NH66. I just did a very detailed note on the NH66, published in the SANDREP, the South Asian Network of Rivers, Dams and People. Those who want it can collect it from Joseph, sir. I think he has a copy of it. what did we find in NH66 that's been done now? It was an old NH66. And this is I'm raising here because it has budgetary concerns. 6,000 crores was given for that project for land acquisition. An old NH, which we all used. And now it's become an NH on embankments and large bridges completely covered. So many hills across the state demolished, paddy lands filled up, water bodies cut. And my prediction, our first prediction is that in every monsoon from here on, at least 100, 120 places in Kerala will have floods just because of the NH. A humongous, dirty project put on us. What is the budgetary impact of all this? It's not just the climate impact that Dr. Pinaki said in the morning. It's an impact that we have created. And when the climate impact comes, it will exasperate it. It's what we have done. And we have no clue how much we will be spending every year for whatever remedial work that we'll have to do. And why did we do this? Because in Kerala, 2017, and I'm going slightly earlier, 10 years perhaps, we had something called the Western Ghats Ecology Expert Panel Report. Ecological State, a Lifeline report. We rubbished it. We called up the assembly, and every MLA worth its name passed a resolution against it. Only one man walked out. He is no more. His name was P.T. Thomas. He said, I don't stand with it. He wanted WGEP to be implemented. And when do we remember the WGEP? It gets evoked every time a landslide happens or an animal kills a human being. Every time. WGEP, we should have done that. Environment, ecologically sensitive areas, we should have done that. But we'll never do it. Then came the PDNA, 2018. What happened to that report? Some classical statements. Ecosystem-based adaptation, resilient infrastructure, long-term climate planning, river basin-based approaches, land use regulations, community engagements, key elements. And all this, they said, we must have a land use policy. And they also said that we must discuss the WGEP. What happened to the PDNA? It got sidelined, and then the RKI came. Yeah. Oh, I have 2 minutes. Great. And then the Rebuild Kerala initiative came, some 75 recommendations. Have we seriously taken those recommendations into the budgets? I don't know. At least PDNA and WGEP have all gone. So essentially right now, when you hit a disaster, let it be COVID or let it be landslide. Disaster, rescue, frenzy, not rescue frenzy, madness around it. Media, such a huge thing. I mean, even if an elephant comes into the roads, it's frenzy for Kerala. Then sympathy, then temporary relief, and then budget silence. This is what I have as a critique for Kerala state. When I say silence, inadequate, I only mean inadequate. So what do we have as a path forward? I have just a few things to say, and I'll rush through this because I don't have time. I completely endorse Dr. Srikumar Chattopadhyay. We cannot have just looking at budget lines. It has to be interconnected. So a structural cross-cutting of the environmental concern should be embedded into every sector that Kerala is. And it has to be tagged in that level, whatever blockchain or whatever systems we want to use. Climate and Disaster Resilience Fund is abysmally small. I would feel that if we are serious about Kerala's Resilience Fund, when I say Resilience Fund, I mean early warning systems. We failed in Mundakai, Churalmala. We are continuing to fail. Ecological risk mapping, soft engineering solutions, risk-based reallocation, all of it. All those very, sort of a ring-fenced budget. 1 to 2% at least should be allocated. Or we are just making a joke of this issue. We are going to face it in the future. Emergency preparedness, WGEP and PDNA being brought back to the framework. Ecological audits for all major projects. We are getting more and more of them. We are going to have another highway parallel to the MC road. We are going to have a ring road. I mean, all these are like, people are frenzied. They'll say that, oh, wonderful. But when it comes, it destroys ecosystems, it destroys livelihoods. really creates an impact. Can we do it without it? As an engineer, let me tell you, we can do it without it. So I'm not against this project. I'm not against a new road coming or a new rail coming. But you don't need to do it destructively in a state like Kerala, in an ecologically fragile state like Kerala. Hill and coastal community protection, we probably need a universal safety net for them. Because in coastal, every time, it's in a knee-jerk reaction kind of. People's houses are lost. Suddenly, we are all going there with relief. When are we going to seriously talk about a universal safety net for hill communities and coastal communities, the most impacted ones? Participatory green budgeting, participatory conservation and eco-restoration use through BMCs and KSBB, prioritize just transitions. When are we seriously going to talk about just transitions in climate, in energy, in agriculture, in transportation, for instance? Strengthening human resources and capacity, very critical, and expanding transparency. And now let me read my last paragraph. Small one. I call it budgeting like a biosphere. Kerala stands at a crossroad. The floods, the landslides, the erosion, the virus. They're all telling us the same thing, that we have crossed thresholds, that the old ways of budgeting, planning, and building are no longer adequate. Budgets are not just about money. Budgets are moral documents. They reveal what we choose to see and what we choose to ignore. They even chart pathways, whether we choose to sink 6,000 crores and all that, or to survive and thrive. It is time to shift from projects to ecosystems, from relief to resilience, from short-term fixes to long-term regeneration. I think it's time for thinking of a budget like we think of a biosphere, a budget web and not the budget line. And this is something very much in line with what Dr. Sri Kumar Chattopadhyay said. Possibly this will be a revolution in this country, if at all we can think about it. I don't see another way that Kerala can survive the next decade. Thank you.
So we have finished the speech by the four panelists. I would like to make very brief remarks. At my age, I come and sit at seminars to learn a few things, and sometimes to ask. At my age, I am entitled to ask foolish questions and make innocent remarks. So I will do that. I was moved by one statement Professor Sridhar Chattopadhyay made: Earth is really one. What I take it to be in this context of sustainable environment is that, we seem to have a very narrow notion of what is a sustainable environment. Being an electrical engineer, I will cite the example of energy. Kerala now possibly gives, the state electricity board gives electricity at maybe about 8 rupees to the people of Kerala. Kerala has enough idle power to give energy at 50 paise. But it is not done because it will damage our environment. So what do? What is the alternative? We use solar energy. We are fast going to become a solar energy state. But what is solar energy? Solar energy comes through solar panels. What are they? They have already produced carbon dioxide emission elsewhere, maybe in Taiwan or China, somewhere. They produce carbon dioxide emission when they are transported. And 25 years from now, in GIFT, there might be a seminar where we are talking about environmental disaster. One of it would be square kilometers of solar panels which have become, went out of service, square kilometers of them. And lakhs of batteries, which is going to be used for the battery energy storage system, which the government is proposing in place of pumped energy storage, which should have been a better alternative. These notions come because we think that Kerala is an island where we solve our environmental problems. That is sustainable. It's just like when the K-Rail came, there was a mention that it would require a lot of rock and it might come from the Western Ghats. And somebody said, no, not from our side. It will come from Tamil Nadu. So the other side of the Western Ghats. But, For Earth, there is no Kerala, there is no India, there is no Taiwan. It is all a continuum. Many of the things that we do seem to be not taking cognizance of such facts. So, look at cars. The central government has said there is environmental pollution with old cars, so we will crush them and we will get people to buy new cars. If the car is producing pollution, why don't you remove the engine? Because the engine is the one which produces the pollution. Why do you dispose the car? I've been using a Maruti 800 for 23 years. Very recently, I had, with a lot of sadness, I had to remove it out of service. See, a new car which is produces many fold more carbon dioxide than the old car which is having some problem. So I think that development and environment are in direct opposition every time. It's in direct opposition. I don't know. Don't think that I have a solution for this. Maybe Gandhians might say, go back to primitive villages. I don't think that works at all. However, we need to be aware that some of the solutions we seem to be proposing in place of hydel, solar is not a clean proposal. It is not a clean proposal. And I would also say the advent of new technologies, mobile phones and now AI makes people use digital infrastructure a lot. In 1970s, when Kerala had Keltron and all that, people always used to say, here is an industry suitable for a state like Kerala, which is very densely populated. Wrong. IT is not an industry suited for any place as it goes now. The huge data centers which power AI, they are a major contributors of carbon dioxide emission in the world. When we just go to Google and search just something that you want to know, you are producing 0.2 grams of carbon dioxide. When you ask ChatGPT to make a picture, 5 grams of carbon dioxide. And when you change your mobile phone after 2 years, 100 kilogram of carbon dioxide emission. Now, are you saying let us keep using the mobile phone for years? Are you saying let us use the car for years? I do not know the answer. But I'm convinced that very plain pictures can be drawn about how environment can be protected. Our interest seems to be that a totally different aspect is being promoted, that we want our GDP to grow. I just stopped my remarks by saying that once Dr. Mohan Gopal came to Kerala University to give a lecture. So I was beside him when he came down. He just slipped and was about to fall, and I held him by hand. And he said, don't worry, if I fall down, the GDP of India will increase. If people sit at home, make their own dosha, I don't think, this is my understanding, please correct me, I will stand corrected. GDP will not grow. You buy lentil, you buy rice, you make it into a paste, you make the dosha yourself. I don't think economics would be happy. They would be more happy if you go and order the dosha dough, or if possible, the dosha itself. Then somebody drives and comes and brings dosha to your house. That is better logic for the GDP growth, but a very bad idea for the environment. I stop here with my confusions, and I now request the discussants to come forward and react to the presentations here. We start with Professor Uman Vyuman. Over to you, sir. You want? Yeah, wait on. Want me to hold you?
Thank you, Dr. Joseph and Dr. Ajit Shankar Nair, for giving me a glorified presence in this auditorium among all the well-known economists of our state. I have nothing to do with economics, but I share the views of Sridhar, because we share the same concern for our environment. And if I am to believe Sridhar 100%, if he assures me that this Silver Line project for the Kerala is shelved for good, then I would like to believe it 100%. The National Highway 66 current work is a curtain raiser for what would have happened if we went ahead with the Silver Line project a few years ago. It's a curtain raiser now. Even the National Highway 66, which is required for us, is itself is an environmental disaster. So any budget which takes into consideration without the contributions of biodiversity as the capital and influenced by the climate change, which we face rigorously now, is a futile attempt. Because any budget should consider the relationship between biodiversity, sustainable development, climate change. These are intimately and intricately related. So all the budget should, because biodiversity is the capital wealth of the world, we talk about continuum. Biodiversity is the capital wealth of a state or a BMC, a biodiversity management committee locally. So we have a system in place actually, as Sridhar mentioned about it. Uh, as was envisaged in the CBD, Convention on Biological Diversity, 1992, and once again reiterated in the Indian Parliament in 2002 through the Indian Biodiversity Act. We have a budgetary provision, which is the third mandate for both. First is conservation of biological diversity. Second is sustainable utilization of the bioresources. And most importantly, the budget or the finance of both is the access and benefit sharing of the commercial exploitation of bioresources by anybody, be it a corporate body, be it a small body. So that the sharing of that benefit will sustain the biological diversity and sustain our economy. That should be our mandate. So we have a state biodiversity board in place. Most importantly, the biodiversity management committees in all the local self-governments of our country supposed to be. At least in Kerala we have. We have formed it as early as 2012. And we are strengthening it, the State Biodiversity Board and the government together are strengthening it. What the government should do is help the biodiversity boards to find resources and not to give money for conservation, but to strengthen it, find money from the biodiversity itself by strengthening the BMCs and supporting the biodiversity board and BMCs with all the local self-government support. And then I think the state will be sustainably developed and the budget also will enhance and we can have a good sustainable ecosystem and the biological diversity. I don't know much about the budgeting. I sincerely endorse all what Sridhar said when it comes to biological diversity and sustainable utilization, sustainable development. That should be our mandate for the future to come.
Thank you, Professor Umman. I think most of you know that Professor Umman V. Umman was the former chairman of the Kerala State Biodiversity Board. We now have Professor S. Muralidharan of K.N. Raj Center, Mahatma Gandhi University.
Respected Chair, only 5 minutes to summarize. So, without mentioning what the panelists told us, the cream of the ideas I may summarize. First thing which I want to present before the audience is that what Professor M.A. Umman started in the morning, the concept of environmental federalism. I think what the panelists discussed is about that. But I want to modify that concept because when we see categorizing public good vertically, that from global good to local public good as suggested by Tybot, I think both a national and international level of environmental federalism is very important. This is what the technical aspects that the three panelists were talking about. Second, See, whether it is hydroelectric project or solar project, when we look into sustainability question, normally we only discuss environmental sustainability, but actually there are 4 pillars of sustainability. We need not be specifically talk about any particular project, whether are they satisfying the 3 E's and S. There is environment sustainability, ethical sustainability, economic sustainability, and the social sustainability. And if a project is able to, let it be Silver Line or NH66 or whatever may be, if these 4 sustainabilities are simultaneously, this is what Professor Sri Kumar was talking about, systemic approach in technical language. But in sustainability, these 4 sustainabilities, if we are able to satisfy, of course, some give and take is required. Sustainability again will be there. Somebody was referring to Viഴിഞ്ഞം. See, when 1930s, when Bristow was designing Cochin Harbour, whatever we experience as a result of Viഴിഞ്ഞം on this Trivandrum coast, he predicted for Cochin, for Chellanam, for the last 70 years they are experiencing. So, reading the book of Saga of Cochin by Bristow is very important, and also work by Professor Moni on the impact of waves on Kerala coast will give us the need for comprehensive approach. I think that was the main idea that the panelists were talking about. They used in terms of networking, systems approach, etc. But actually economics take care of those things. I think then another thing, as far as the role of the local bodies, that is, I mentioned about that vertical categorization. And I studied a few environmental programs of local bodies. No connection. That in one particular panchayat, there was a program for irrigation. They put all the pipelines, then consulted the geology department, and after 1 year, they reported that there is no sufficient groundwater. So what invested for laying the pipe became a waste. So systemic approach, I think very important as gift, I understand, is giving advice to government in making policy making. I think this approach, I think further questions can be there, but this is the gist what they were arguing. I am strongly supporting all your arguments in terms of these two, that the environmental federalism, considering the vertical categorization of the public good from global to local, plus simultaneous satisfaction of the 4 sustainabilities, not environment alone. And if you look at UNEP, you can see that 4 pillars of sustainability. Then regarding the chairperson referring to both economists and Gandhian, we will make personal talk. I have difference of opinion. This forum is not fit enough to bring a controversy here. We will personally talk. Thank you very much. I think I did not exceeded the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Muralidharan. We now have Dr. Shinu Varki of SB College, Chennasheri, to respond.
Thank you, Professor K.J. Joseph and Gift, for this opportunity. As pointed out throughout the presentations, without doubt, the experiences of the last 7 to 8 years have underscored the intensified environmental pressures that is put on the state of Kerala. We have witnessed a complex interplay of escalating waste generation and the more frequent and severe extreme weather events, which have a significant impact on the state's rich biodiversity and the various economic sectors. As all the presenters have indeed pointed out, Kerala has demonstrated proactive governance through comprehensive policy responses, which include the 14th five-year plan 2022-27 with a three-part report on environment, biodiversity, and climate change and coastal management, the state action plan on climate change, the pioneering Kerala Environment Budget 2024-25, and the Kerala State Biodiversity Strategies and Action Plan. There is no question with respect to the fact that Kerala has a robust and forward-thinking policy framework for environmental sustainability. However, the challenge has been in the effective implementation and the consistent enforcement, which we generally call as the last mile problem in implementation. Against this background, I would like to place before the floor the following questions. What could be done to address the problem of this implementation gap in the state? How to address the problems associated with the critical area of climate finance on account of the strains placed on the state budget. As pointed out by Professor Srikumar, what could be done to reduce the instances of human-wildlife conflicts? And how to further empower local bodies and communities in environmental decision-making and project implementation? Thank you.
Thank you very much, discussants, for keeping time and raising very valid points. We have time for a couple of questions from the floor. Couple of questions. So it's now open to the audience to raise questions. The organizers will give you a mic, and you can also mention, please be brief and please mention whom you wish should respond to your question.
Good afternoon. My question is about the Kerala solid waste management problems. Kerala has been generating a huge amount of waste in last few years. In last 23, we had problem of Brahmapuram firing. That type of incidents has happened. So Kerala depends other states for the recycling and this type of things for waste management. And the most of these duties lies on local bodies. They are the managers of waste and these problems. So does the state government need more actions or needs to act directly to address this issue? That's my question. So it's anyone who can ask.
I will hand over to Dr. Sridhar. There is in Ambalamugal, there is a very extensive facility to manage waste, including medical waste and toxic waste. Well, I'm not very sure whether it's good enough for Kerala. To cite one example, there are about maybe a few lakhs of CFL lamps lying around in Kerala, not collected. And what is going to happen is if they're thrown around, the mercury would leach into the soil. It would come through the plants and we would be ending up eating it. I haven't seen, just one remark, I haven't seen this being collected carefully and being, with the LED lamps coming, this problem is slightly different or maybe over. But lakhs of CFL lamps given free by the KSCB is lying around in Kerala. And I went to Ambalamugal to see what is happening. These lamps don't seem to be coming there. Sir, Sridhar would like.
It's a very, I'll make it as short as possible. We can take it up later if you're really interested in it. It's a very long drawn issue. So we started with big mistakes. Lalur plant, Vilapilchala plant. And we were all centralized plants. And then eventually all the centralized plants across the state failed. Failed for technological reasons, failed for social engineering reasons. We couldn't really bring organic compost there. Mixed waste came. Mixed waste composting is not composting. So technically also it failed. But then fortunately the Sujita mission, and thanks to some very, a lot of civil society people who worked along the Sujita mission, including the Green Army in Trivandrum, the mayor at that time, Prashant, and Dr. Vasuki was instrumental sometime. A lot of people, including the government at that time, stopped thinking in this whole centralized theme and then started looking at the decentralized approach. Right now, that approach has evolved. I'm making it very short, has evolved over time with different people coming, different governments coming. Sometimes there is a foraging into again mistakes like the Brahmapuram, and then it again failed. So now they're correcting it. So right now we don't have that approach, but we are going this decentralized way. But the problem with the decentralized way is that it will take time. And it will take a lot of commitment from people, panchayats, LSGs and all that, which is slowly nudging and happening. One very good thing that has happened right now is that the team that is running the LSG, which includes the minister and the officers in charge and the slightly lower level team, is actually very, very committed to this whole decentralized approach and believe in it. And also in this whole zero waste approach, which basically means that waste cannot be burnt, cannot be dumped and all that. So those are we're being very careful about it. Added to that is the Malini Mukta Keralam approach now. What I'm trying to say is that the state, I presume, and I understand in some close corner also, even while I'm a critic of a lot of other things, these are things that you really have to appreciate. The state has taken a very difficult path of doing decentralized, people's level approach. It's probably not succeeded in lots of states, and hence there is a huge critique that we shouldn't do this. Continuously, there is a lot of both corporate and also administrative struggles inside. But I think the path is well taken, and probably we'll see some good results over. Malini Mukta Keralam, especially this whole garbage dumping question, you cannot dump and you're getting fined and all that, I think is a very, very strong step. It'll obviously become better if we all participate in a little more better manner in terms of proper collection, supplying it properly, segregating it properly, all these kind of things. So that's a short reply. But this is like for me personally involved in this whole waste campaign, it's been 27 years. So you must realize that when we started talking about zero waste, it was in 2002. And in 2025, we are actually moving ahead in some form. Thank you.
Any more questions? Yeah, please, sir. Please, briefly.
I think Dr. Sridharan made it clear, but let me put 1 or 2 points on this issue. See, one very important thing for Kerala is we are a land scarce state. We are also undulated state. You do something here, automatically coming downstream, the impact. So these are the externalities for which actually we went for the decentralization because centralized system was not working. So what we are talking parallelly, what is called that a quadruple helix model. Quadruple helix model will bring the experts, the local body, NGOs, and the educational institutes in one platform and think a little bit more. You need an innovative solution. The existing solutions are not really has all the answers. That's our realization. But as Sridharan told, the government is very serious about it. We are looking into it from the different angle, but then it will take a little bit more time. But the most important part here, who generates waste? We. And we have no responsibility. That's very, very, very important thing to really take into account. That what is my or every individual's responsibility in the waste management. If you make a really survey, you will find even you do not like to segregate the waste, leave alone the taking care of. So it's a very burning issue, but then I think it's a challenge we have to face. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Well, when it comes to disaster management, both Shekhar sir and Professor Damodaran, they have two types of solutions. One is towards the relief measures, how to deal with the issues or the after happening a disaster and so on. But Professor Damodaran has given more importance to the insurance part, parametric insurance and other things. The problem with Indian society is that we are not that much convinced with the insurance schemes, especially when it comes to health insurance or crop insurance. When it comes to crop insurance, only 3% is the penetration rate in India. But likewise, the health insurance, the government is taking some steps, and slowly it is assimilating to the people. So when it comes to the disaster management, how is it possible in Indian society to get assimilated to the population? Because still we think that when disaster happens, the government has to come and do some relief measures rather than going for or taking a resilience from the part of the people themselves. So how can we implement these kind of insurance measures among the people, especially those who are living in the vulnerable geographical areas?
Um, you want me to go? Yes. So one, insurance is nothing new for Kerala. We already have a crop threshold-based insurance scheme running in Palghat. Started 3 years back. We also had a very detailed study conducted under the chairmanship of Dr. Raghuraman, Harilal sir's colleague who chaired. GIFT also had members in that study, wherein we realized the state requires a risk transfer mechanism, a risk pool, essentially. Insurance is one tiny bit of it. Insurance has not all the answers that a state needs. Its fiscal deficits cannot be handled by just offsetting it to insurance. So a risk pool is being conceived. It's at the very final stage. The policy decisions will unroll before, I think, December. It's in a very mature stage now. We would be beginning with extreme event threshold-based insurance scheme for BPL families, but that's just the beginning. We are looking at not less than a 5,000 crore risk pool, which will be administered, which will be threshold link. SDMA will set the thresholds for it, and we'll capitalize on that. It need not necessarily be also CatNat bonds. Kerala is also the first state, probably if you would know, to go the first sub-sovereign in the country to have a masala bond. And that was again a CatNat bond, if you realize it. When state went to London Stock Exchange and harnessed about 2,500 crores. So the risk transfer mechanism that you are talking about, insurance is one tiny bit of it. And when we were discussing this, Sri Namashivayam, who's planning board member, I work with him very closely. He's a lead for us from planning board. He was telling that last year, the insurance penetration has declined in this country. Earlier, it was 4.8% and it has come down to 3.8% this last year when this insurance regulators were looking at it. So essentially, for a country like India, there is a cultural problem with respect to insurance in terms of assimilating it. But this is not very different what I saw in US. I was an IVLP with the US State Department and had the opportunity to be in San Francisco for a couple of months to understand how they deal with things. And we went to the area where we had the worst of forest fires. And there were huge, huge villas which were gutted by forest fire. And you could see after a year of the fire, a lot of fire debris, buildings, vehicles, all of it still burned and gutted there. Nobody is willing to move it out. And they have all put in claims. But all these villas, which are $1 billion worth, is underinsured and is probably having, say, $1 million of insurance. So the fire service or the cleaning agents, the debris clearance agents are not willing to remove it because they are underinsured. This is also something that we saw when the shipwrecks happened in Kerala. Don't think that MSC is going to come and pay and then they take the ship. No, there is a insurance pool. It's called the P&I Club. They handle the entire process. And if a ship is underinsured, that's it, done. You don't get anything. But luckily, the ships that we had to face with are well insured. They're by the P&I Club's top 5. So they're willing to pay. They're willing to commit to the state to clean it up. So this is not just Kerala's problem, India's problem. Underinsurance is a is a global problem. And many places where insurance is mandatory. I lived 7.5 years in the Netherlands. There it is mandatory. Therefore, we have. Otherwise, we will evade it. Right? People don't want to really do that. So, insurance is not all the answers for risk transfer. You also want to add to? Yes, sir.
So I think, let me put it this way. I did not talk about cat bonds. I talked about parametric insurance. So there is a difference between cat bonds and parametric insurance. Now, what is the difference? The difference is parametric insurance is based on the probability of an event happening backed by data. Now, I don't have to go too much of a stretch to understand that. Where did I get this idea? Parametric insurance was something which is very new. It has happened only in the last 4 to 5 years ago. But there was a surrogate insurance developed in the US. I worked with the US EPA for some time in Atlanta. So I could understand that the county level negotiations with people, the appraisal, there is a training program built up, contingency program built up on how they have to perceive certain disasters. And the whole idea is parametric insurance does not ask any beneficiary to come and submit, any targeted victim to come and submit the papers. It is basically based on a straightaway release of a certain ex gratia amount of money. Now, when I went to Philippines last year, now I'm talking from experience again. These people, the local counties, had a very interesting formula. They thought this was a boon for them to get at least 50% payment, which was due to them in hand. In hand immediately after the disaster or even before the disaster strikes. Right? Now, that is not the same as a natural disaster machinery that I saw in Nagapattinam and other places, where the ex gratia payment itself takes about 2 to 3 days to reach. Right? The machinery is not bad. It doesn't work that way. And the second thing is, if you then what's the hurry? Why can't people wait for 2 days? We are taking them to shelters, giving them food and other things. The problem is, I found in Nagapattinam, people go and take loans for consumption expenditure at 90 to 100% interest if the payment doesn't come out. And that is where the parametric insurance works very well. So Philippines is not a very developed country as compared to us. It is communication is very clear. As part of emergency preparedness, it is done that this may happen. This is the kind of payout you will have. You will get, but this is not for your personal effects getting lost, your property getting lost, or your land getting lost. It is only a broad, median level payment output. And then the training is how do you fulfill the claims. Now, I have developed a small model, which is a workable model I am testing in Karnataka. Now, that model is based on agentic AI. Agentic AI is a risky thing, but it is workable. Basically, the AI computes all the data which is coming from the edge. Again, I'm not talking technical, but I'm an economist, so I think so that the edge level data, that is in a particular basin in Muatipura, you will find exactly how much of rainfall had passed by, how much of stream flow had happened by, and that is recorded and verified with the local community. That this is it normal or is it abnormal? They don't ask about measurements. If the moment they say it was abnormal, then you are ready with your property claims that I lost so much of property. Then the inspection takes place. So it is not that insurance 100% will be covered by parametric insurance. It would be 50, but it is given by the government. The premium is paid by the government, and the minimum comes to for the individual. He has to again may have to rely on the normal course. That is, he submits his Aadhaar, he submits his property documents. He has to do it. So that is how the whole thing works. So communication and outreach is a continuing process in Philippines. That is how it is done. Every year they say that this is going to happen. This is what you have to do. This is how you have to submit the form.
Thank you. We'll have just two more quick questions. There is a queue already.
Yeah.
We start with the queue. Would you?
Yeah.
Okay. So next on queue is Dr. Muralidharan. Would you wish?
No, I thought I had raised my hand quite some time back, and
Would you settle it between you two?
thank you, Murugan. My question is to Shekhar. See, very interesting presentation you made. It was very informative. But because my question is, if you look at the Union Finance Commission, over the years, the disaster, they make an award for disaster management and disaster mitigation. This has evolved starting from the Calamity Relief Fund of the older days. Now, 15th Union Finance Commission made some major modifications. I would like to hear your comments on that. Further, what submissions have you made to the 16th Finance Commission?
Thank you. Let us make it very brief because time.
Sir, to react on what 15th Finance Commission has done, from a practical disaster manager's perspective, and that's a collective perspective that 4 or 5 of us who have been long in this executing post across this country have taken, is that it is much of a mathematical jugglery that they have done. So there is a certain corpus that has been projected, and they artificially decided to allocate certain percentages to 3 different sectors. So there's something going to mitigation, something going to preparedness and capacity building, but it's ultimately a single kitty, which otherwise would have come as one kitty to the state. They've said, okay, there are 3 kitties and you can't mix the kitties and you have to stick to this kitties, utilize it like this. So that's a very artificial, very difficult procedure for any state to follow. They have also put in a number of different processes before any money could be taken out and dispensed with. In one word, I have had been telling that Union Finance Commission and the Union government has to start to learn to trust states with respect to the finances that are allocated to it, particularly in the DM sector. That's about 15th Finance Commission. And as probably you would already know, there is roughly about 20,000 crores still unallocated and lying there, and nobody knows what will be the fate of the projects that are going to be awarded this year. Will it be carried forward by the 16th Finance Commission? Regarding 16th Finance Commission, the first and the foremost point that we have raised is trust the states, give the money untied to us. Let us decide. You can set certain ballpark norms, but don't micromanage in terms of how much will you pay for a shoes and how much will you pay for a pen. That's for the states to decide. We'll decide. Probably Kerala will pay more, Orissa might pay less, depends on how the living standards are. That's the first point. Second is the allocations when it comes to mitigation is now artificially defined from a single corpus of SDRMF. We want a clear separate allocation on mitigation, and that clear separate allocation of mitigation cannot be a 10% escalation of the last 15 Finance Commission corpus that they have defined and then say, okay, from this we give you a mitigation fund. They have to follow what Kerala did in 2012. We created our own mitigation fund, which was allocated by the state government directly. So a similar process is what we deem. There are other 20 different submissions that we have made.
I think we'll have the last question from Dr. Muralidharan. I must say that it would have been very nice if some of the young students here raised a question.
See, for the last 20 years, I have been involved in mobilizing, in segregating.
Would you hold the mic closer so that
segregating residue, I would like to call it. And we also mobilize it to these institutions like Sujita Mission. But my question what happens to the final disposal of these materials? We have no idea at the bottom level. So at the local level, we are clearing it. But what happens at the end point? And one student studied about the class plastic in Cochin City and also electronic waste. She could trace up to Sujata mission. When what happened after that, we have no information.
The electronic goes to Ambalamugal landfill.
And sir, is that the way
Yeah.
in which we should?
Sridhar,
Sir, is that the way in which we should dispose? That
no,
is my
no, definitely not. It can improve.
Muralidhar sir, see, Sujita Mission is not taking any waste, okay? In my understanding, Sujita Mission is not collecting waste. They're setting up systems. They're helping panchayats, everybody set up systems. There is a Clean Kerala company formed, which is handling waste, different types of waste. Lots of composting system units have been started. If you go to a local panchayat, you'll see one composting unit or two, multiple composting centers run by various units, including Haritha Karma Sena. So Haritha Karma Sena is the agency which actually picks up the waste from homes and all that, and that is largely composted. The other waste gets segregated, and then the segregated thing, some of this waste which has value is going, because even from our homes they'll come and pick it up, and some of them go into recycling plants, cement kilns, all this kind of things, and these are not good things. I mean, if you put it in the cement kiln, I still have a problem with that, but nevertheless it's going out. There has been a crisis with it illegally going into Tamil Nadu and Tamil Nadu complaining and all that. So all these things keep coming. This, what is it, the written things keep coming. But that's all happening. But what I'm trying to say is that the intention is great. We are also keeping watch. As a civil society, we are also keeping watch. Sometimes, incinerators, for example, and I think you are raising the incinerator question. We were fighting incinerators right from beginning because burning will cause dioxins and fuels. And we stopped the big ones. Kerala actually stopped having big ones, but small ones are coming up all over the place. But then the watch that we are trying to do is, what are they burning in it? If they're burning paper, cloth, non-plastic stuff, and sanitary napkins, that's what they're mostly for. We still are fine with it, quote unquote, compromise. But then if they're going to get into plastic, one, that will fail. Two, we'll also have a problem. So we'll also have to keep watch throughout till a proper system comes up. Our wish is in 3 to 5 years time again from here onwards, but that's what we have to do.
I think some points have been made. Maybe we carry on with. Shall I give a preference to a young person?
Yeah,
and then we have this as a personal talk, if you don't mind. Don't you think that a young person should take part in a discussion?
I want one question.
I'm Parvati Sajeev, Center for Budget Studies, CUSAT. My question is regarding technology and decentralization. So, a lot of advanced technologies being used in disaster management was presented here, DAGs and parametric insurance. And there is also talks about decentralization because state budgeting is not able to capture the regional sensitivities. So, so there is an interesting trade-off that happens here, right? Because if we are trying to incorporate the technologies decentralized to the decentralized to all the local bodies, it will constitute an enormous resource burden, which is not feasible. But when we try to do this centrally, that will not even lead to decentralization. So how do we reconcile this trade-off?
You can very briefly respond.
See, I will tell you something which you may like to consider. There is a concept called generative AI kiosk. It is being done. So kiosks are done in rural areas, right? So the issue there is not to spread digital literacy. Basically, it doesn't mean that you take a computer, take a mobile phone and start browsing. That is not digital literacy. You go in the next step on how to use it, how to use an app to get something of your choice. So these simple things are happening with the mobile phone, and it is also happening at the level of AI. We are straight away catapulting ourselves to the AI level, how to use an AI app. And people, you will be surprised to know there are any number of Kerala perhaps is the best example. Gujarat as a state, which I have been visiting for some time. In rural areas of Gujarat, people are smart enough to use ChatGPT apps to get a quick statistic on how the prices have varied in the last 3 or 4 days and how they should market their groundnut products the next day. So these things are happening. You don't need formal education for that. Some people are very good at looking at AI. They're very good at using digital equipments and they don't have a background. I have to struggle for a digital equipment. I'm not a digital native. But today's generation, led by people like you know much better than your parents on how to run that is called affordance. So this is happening in the rural areas. And I'm certain that this is going to happen in Kerala because Kerala is a place where all kinds of unusual applications of technologies happen. But on the face of it, you are right. The first generation of computer revolution, they had a strong barrier in breaking this illiteracy. But now it is really caught up after mobile phones have come.
I apologize for not admitting any more questions. We have run out of time. I thank you all the eminent panelists for the very scholarly, erudite discussions held and also the discussants. Thank you very much. And over to the organizers. You want to make some announcements or do we call it a day?
Thank you all. We are winding up the session for today. So tomorrow, session 5 on investing for the future Kerala will commence on 10 a.m. Thank you.